Get to the UTSA Texas debacle. Bludgeoning. I only said that for you. Texas defeated UTSA 56-7, and quite frankly, it wasn't that close. I want to talk about UTSA first before we get to the Arch Manning stuff, because we are a San Antonio podcast first and foremost. UTSA sitting 1-2 right now. They ran the ball a little bit better against Texas than I was expecting. They have not run the ball well at all this season. They have a pretty young offensive line. Mekhi Hart still working his way back as well. Not where Traylor wants to be. Let's hear from Coach Traylor a little bit today. This was asked about when he was asked about practice, if it was more passionate or if they were trying to learn more from today's practice.
Just both. I mean, it's just time on task. I mean, nobody wants to hear it because it's just hard work, man. It's just hard, which is where we've been very successful. We have an unbelievable culture. We're not result-driven. We're process-driven. We keep our head down. We control the controllables, and you just keep chipping away. And if you can stay healthy, your team will keep getting better each week, and you'll have a really good football season. Sometimes in this game, you can't, because it's a physical game, and the only way you get good at it is about going out there and being physical. So we need to get some fortune to continue to practice and play as hard as we're playing right now. Just both. I mean, it's just
quick retrigger. How does UTSA kind of dig out of the hole that they're in right now? Obviously, last year they were kind of in a similar situation. They were, I believe, 1-3 last year after the Army loss, after they lost to Tennessee. Right now they're sitting at 1-2. You got Houston Christian coming in, and then you have Rice, and then you have East Carolina, and then you have a bye. So what do they do now as going into a game where you're 35-point favorites? It's kind of a get-right spot for them. Hopefully you go into your conference play starting 2-2, but how do they kind of dig themselves out of this hole?
Just reps, They're really young. Let me tell you this. I think this team is more talented than some of the teams that won things, but they're not as experienced, and that matters, especially early in the season. 2 years ago, they were 1-2 just like this. They lost at Texas, and they were 1-2. They had Texas Southern at home. They beat up on them. And that was the first of 10 straight. They won 10 in a row, ran the table, and won the conference championship. I don't think they're going to do that this year. I think they still could very easily lose on the road at East Carolina and still reset and be very much in the thick of the race for the American. And I think that's what should have been the reasonable goal all along, 8-4 or whatever that is, and contend for the league. I think that the expectations of playing for the college football championship were outrageous for a team that was going to have this many new players, especially at quarterback and receiver. And without J.T. Clark, without Mekhi Hart, they're going to be good. They're going to be fine. They're going to beat Houston Christian by 30. They're going to go on the road to East Carolina, and that'll be close. And they could win or lose that, and then they'll be back on track. I think they're getting better each week. I was at the Texas game in Austin this weekend, and I sat there in the press box and was very proud of them. I thought they played as well as you could possibly play against Texas. Their superior opponent, who has, by the way, incredible team speed. Texas is really, really big and fast. And Owen was much more composed than he was against Texas State. And they ran the ball much better. They got stoned a couple times on 3rd and 4th down, but I thought defensively they ran to the ball. Getting Danye back was really big. He was really good in pursuit. So I think they're going to be fine. I don't know what people are expecting from UTSA. They're not Texas. They're not Georgia.
They were expecting a team that got first place votes in the media poll.
And they still might be that. But Texas, again, I'm going back to what I said about New Orleans. I think you got to give Texas State credit and Texas credit. Texas, obviously, best team in the country right now. Texas State almost beat your Arizona State squad.
But they didn't.
They're going to be good. And I think UTSA is going to be fine because they have so much talent and they have so much depth. But they're just young, and they're going to grow up, and they're going to win most of their games this year.
I like what Brennan Brady's dad said on Twitter. He's like, don't discount all the good that happened at UTSA was in part because you had guys that grew up together, played together as kids, competed against each other in some regards in high school or played together in high school. And what that did, building cohesion and trust and everything else, not only internally, but outwardly too, for those that were coming into the program. And then to have your leaders, two San Antonio guys that had those local connections, but also then were gregarious enough and able to work the room. And because they're such good people, be able to win over a bunch of guys too. And, you know, how often did that rear its head in those close games where they would win and maybe they should have lost, but they had that extra je ne sais quoi,
Yeah.
you know, that maybe other teams don't have. So I don't know. I think it takes a while to probably team build in some regard, and I think they'll get there at some point. But again, it's what Don was talking about with, you know, the reps. You need the reps. You need time on the field together, going to these battles together, going to these hard practices together. Ultimately, it's going to pay dividends, but there was a lot to replace, I think, in some of these intangible areas that maybe we didn't really quite give that enough of an inertia during the preseason.
I would just say my panic meter for them is a little bit higher. Like, just speaking of panic meters, is a little bit higher this year as it was previous 2 years because of that.
Yeah.
Though. With no Frank, with no Rashad, with no Cephas, like without those guys here, how does this team respond? And that's just a question that I don't know. I don't have the answer to yet. I know guys like Oscar and JT, they're going to get this team right. When do they get right is the question.
Yep, that's right. And to Chuck's point, you think about it. The tipped ball that Oscar catches to win the division, which they go
Against
on to
North
win.
Texas?
Against UAB.
Yeah.
That's one play. Oscar's one-handed catch over the middle against North Texas. That's 2 plays. JT's long catches in both the UAB game and the North Texas game in clutch moments. Zakari reaching out for the first down on 4th down by, it looked like he was a full yard short. That goes another way. They don't have any conference championships. On 3 different plays, it's kind of like Manu's foul on Dirk or point 4. It's like one play in each of those moments is the difference between UTSA winning conference championships or not. This team, as Chuck said, we don't know if they have all this talent, but we don't know if they have the guy that when the rubber meets the road, 10 seconds left, makes the one play. Yeah. And you won't know that until you get into those moments, and some of these guys grow up.
I think that's well said. Speaking of guys who make the one play, JT, I'm just going to make a prediction here against Houston Christian. I think we see JT on the field against Houston Christian. 10 snaps.
I hope so. I'd take him anytime, any place. Just seeing him on the field would warm, I think, a lot of people's hearts.
I also think it would help the team, not just his playing ability, but his presence of being on the field in the pads again. What he's gone through is very well documented. He didn't even think he would play football again at one point, and now hopefully I'm right, and he makes his debut this week. A pro
prospect, and then so again it goes back to who's going to be the playmakers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you think what Frank was a playmaker, right? And he had Cephas in the league, JT, who everybody was saying was at worst going to be a middle round draft pick.
Zakari too
before he got hurt. Zakari making a one-handed catch for Illinois last week. You know, you can go right down the list.
Trey Moore
with dudes.
Off the edge over the years.
Yeah, I mean. Sincere McCormick in the league.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice to have that kind of talent around you and guys that, you know, work their way and have pro football potential on the field like what Texas has seemingly at every position.
It's kind of like Frank was Tim Duncan, you know? We took him for granted. Frank Harris made a lot of things happen.
Is that when McCown, LaMarcus Aldridge? No.